This video is specifically geared towards a British audience because of the context of the video subject, so to speak, but it can probably apply in other countries as well. The issue is what I would call regionalised bigotry. Let me explain this. I've seen a lot of videos online about various British cities, posted usually by people from those cities, sort of highlighting the landmarks, sporting achievements, etc., etc., nightlife, things like that. And one thing I notice is, whilst there are positive comments, there's also the negative comments are always in the context of insulting another city or sort of comparing cities. Now, there's some prominent examples. There's always this thing between Leeds and Manchester, Manchester and Birmingham, London and just about everywhere else, Bradford and Leeds, Newcastle and Sunderland, Newcastle and Leeds, Glasgow and Edinburgh, Glasgow and Manchester, Liverpool and Manchester, etc., etc., and it goes on and on like that. And it does get quite frustrating because, you know, if you're someone who's patriotic or someone who cares at all about this country, you would recognise that every city has both positive points and negative points. Now, I'm well travelled in the UK. I've been to most of our big British cities several times. The only sizable cities I haven't been to is Cardiff, Aberdeen, Southampton, Portsmouth, Plymouth. I know Northampton's a town, I haven't been there. Derby, Stoke-on-Trent. They're the only places I haven't been. I've been pretty much every other sizable town or city in this country. So I'm very well travelled. And I can honestly say there's something about all of them I like. Now, it's true that every city has flaws and there is legitimate criticism to be had, but sometimes I see comments that really annoy me. Like, I saw one on the Leeds video, was like saying, Leeds is much better than Manchester, but they're both better than the shithole of England, which is Birmingham. Now, that irritated me. A, because I actually like Birmingham a lot. B, because it's factually wrong. Birmingham has a lot of good things going for it. And C, because it's just small-minded. It's obviously, you wouldn't use the word racist because we're talking about within the same country. You wouldn't even use the word xenophobic, but it is a sort of regionalised bigotry whereby people are so biased towards their home city that they're very insulting towards other cities and this is ridiculous because we're all British. We shouldn't be downgrading any of our cities. Now, it's true that there are places which experience problems with things like unemployment, buildings being closed, crime and so on. But, you know, and there's nothing wrong with highlighting those problems and talking about those problems, but to represent a city as being only about those problems is simply, it's not fair. For example, Hull often gets slack as being some backwater place. I went to Hull and I have to say I found it very interesting. It's quite a pleasant city centre. There's lots of nice buildings there. I think we went to a few interesting museums. It's a decent place and it doesn't deserve some of the slack it gets. Even places that wouldn't be big tourist destinations will have some charm. I mean, Wolverhampton, for instance, is another city that often gets slack. But, you know, it has a very beautiful medieval church, St. Peter's Collegiate. It has a very fine art gallery. And, you know, it's not a massive city, but it just annoys me when people are so negative about a place because they're not contributing anything to it. You know, you might think you're... And one area where this really is highlighted is in football, when people are so obsessive about their own team that they'll actually get to the point of insulting other cities' sort of downfalls or tragedies, and that to me is disgusting. Look, I would make this point. It doesn't matter what city you're in. If a British city, for example, got hit by a terrorist bombing, let's say, for example, Sheffield was suddenly hit in a terrorist attack, Just because you're from Leeds or Nottingham doesn't mean you're going to celebrate that. If you were a patriot, if you had any sort of sentiments like that, you would have profound. You know what I'm trying to say? It's I'm not talking about friendly banter between cities. That's fine, but the problem is in this country, a lot of people get so regionalised and they become very close-minded, and they cannot see the country beyond their little bubble, their town, their city, sometimes even their neighbourhood, and it's just so pathetic. Now, there's nothing wrong with being proud of where you're from. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of pride in your particular city, but that doesn't mean you should insult other cities. Everywhere has something going for it. Every big city in Britain, in my opinion, has something good about it. And yes, they all have something bad, but you could probably name any city and it would have something going for it. I mean, where I come from, there's a huge rivalry between Sunderland and Newcastle. There's people in Sunderland won't even go into Newcastle. And it is true, Newcastle for years has overshadowed Sunderland. But Sunderland has a lot of things going for it as well. We've a very impressive public museum, free. It's a big comprehensive museum, looking at Sunderland's industrial past, but also has a lot of other things in there that are of interest. We have very pleasant winter gardens. We have a big contemporary art gallery. We have a National Glass Centre. So we're a very pleasant public park. I think people just need to be open-minded when it comes to this. And I'm not sort of saying we should never speak about facts. So I'm not saying... And also, if you've had a bad experience in a city, you have a right to maybe have a negative perception based on that. But that still doesn't mean you should call a place a shithole. I mean, for example, if you get mugged in, let's say, Nottingham, that doesn't mean Nottingham is shit. It probably just means you were unlucky. Because that sort of thing could happen anywhere. Now, it's true that crime levels might be higher in some places more than others, but what I'm trying to get across at here is I'm so sick of this bigoted, small-minded attitude. We should be patriotic. We should care about the nation as a whole. And we should never sort of celebrate misfortune in another city, because that is another British city. It's like, you're just stupid. It's like, what's the expression? Friendly fire. It's like, and I'm not either advocating for sort of nationalist closed-mindedness either, i.e. hostility towards other countries. I'm just trying to get at this stupid mentality a lot of people have in this country, where they're obsessed by their own city, but they'll do that in a certain way whereby they're insulting other cities, and I'm so fed up with it. You know, I honestly find something about every city I like. I do have preferences, but generally I wouldn't say any city in this country is shit in those words. There's cities that have challenges that need to be taken on, but you know, if you call a place shit, that isn't helping it. That isn't giving any more, contributing anything. You know, you could talk about negativity. You could say this city suffers from high unemployment, this city suffers from poverty, this city suffers from not using its resources or whatever. But you should also be open-minded and say, look, this has worked, for example, in Manchester. They should do that in Bradford. This has worked in Liverpool. They should do that in Bristol. This has worked in Bristol. They should do it in Aberdeen, etc. Cities should prop each other up, not pull each other down. And that's basically all I really want to say in this video. I was born in Belfast. I've grown up in Sunderland, and I studied in Wolverhampton. And whilst I would acknowledge the problems any of those three cities have, I would never sort of slam any of them down. People need to be open-minded and try and... Look, some cities are better than others, that's just a fact. They have more to them, they're cleaner, they have more going for them. But if a city is struggling, just ridiculing it because you're from another city isn't helpful to anyone. It's unpatriotic in my opinion, because you know, when one city suffers in this country, as far as I'm concerned, that has a stain on the whole country. So we need to be open-minded, and this applies to other countries as well. I mean, I'm sure similar rivalries exist elsewhere. I've seen often people debating among American cities and among Dutch cities and so on. So it's people just need to be open-minded and try. And I'm not talking about friendly banter. That's fine. I'm talking about when people are even sometimes vitriolic about other cities. I'm so fed up with it. You need to travel more and just, if you've had a bad experience in a city, don't denounce the whole city. Just sort of look at it like, or even if you don't have to like the place, but don't wish misfortune to it. Don't. That's it really. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know where you're from and how you feel about this issue. And needless to say, I don't want to hear things like, oh, Liverpool shit, Birmingham shit, etc. Whatever your views are, try and keep them respectful. Okay, cheers.